The Empire taxed a human freighter. That was their first mistake. The Oreth corridor had no owner. That was the whole point of it. Every species that used it knew the rule. Neutral space. No flags. No tolls. No authority except the Yaveth Compact, which every major species had signed 30 years ago. The corridor existed because trade needed a clean road, and a clean road needed to belong to nobody. The Iron Meridian had used this corridor 11 times in the past 2 years, without a single problem. Today was different. 2 Drathan patrol cruisers dropped out of drift fold directly in front of the ship, blocking the lane. They were big ships, not warships, but heavy enough to make the point. Their hull markings were Drathan Imperial Border Authority, though the Oreth corridor had no border to authorize. Dara Wells had been reviewing cargo logs in the back office when Ray Okonkwo called her to the bridge. She took one look at the 2 ships on the forward screen and sat down slowly in the command chair. "They hailing us?" she asked. "Already are," Ray said. She opened the channel. The face on screen was a Drathan officer, gray-skinned, flat-eyed, wearing a uniform with too many decorations for someone running a checkpoint in empty space. His name tag read Subcommander Reth. "Cargo vessel Iron Meridian," Reth said. "You are carrying declared goods valued at approximately 420,000 credits. Under Drathan Transit Facilitation Directive 7, you are required to submit a fee of 18% of declared cargo value before proceeding." Dara let the silence sit for a moment. "There is no Drathan Transit Facilitation Directive that applies to the Oreth corridor," she said. "This is neutral space under the Yaveth Compact. You have no jurisdiction here." Reth blinked, slow and deliberate, like someone who had given this answer many times before. "The fee is non-negotiable. Payment ensures your cargo will not be subject to a full compliance inspection, which can take between 2 and 6 weeks. 2 to 6 weeks, in deep space, with perishable pharmaceutical components in the hold." Dara looked at Ray. Ray looked back at her. His face said what both of them were thinking. This is a robbery, not a legal one, not even a pretend legal one, just a robbery with uniforms. "I need 5 minutes," Dara said to Reth. She muted the channel. She pulled up the ship's legal recorder, a system all registered human vessels carried, mandated by the Merchant Marine Authority after a diplomatic incident 6 years ago. It logged every communication, every sensor reading, every timestamp, automatically encrypted and mirrored to a remote server that no one on the ship could edit or delete. She activated it manually to make sure it was running. The small green light blinked on. Everything from this moment forward was on record. She also checked the corridor around them. There were 3 other ships visible on long-range scan, 1 Keluvian freighter, 2 Ashari bulk haulers, all stopped, all sitting in front of Drathan cruisers. She reopened the channel. "How do we submit payment?" she asked. Reth gave her a transfer code. She processed it. 75,600 credits, drawn from the ship's operating account, transferred in real time to a Drathan Imperial Commerce account. The transaction receipt printed automatically. She saved 3 copies in different locations on the ship system, and 2 more were already mirrored off-ship by the recorder. "Passage approved," Reth said, and the 2 cruisers moved aside. The Iron Meridian accelerated into the corridor. Ray waited until they were well past sensor range before he spoke. 3 other ships stopped, all non-Drathan. "I saw," Dara said. "This isn't new. They've been running this for a while." "Probably," she said. She was already writing. The incident report form was standard: vessel name, route, date, time, names of parties involved, nature of incident, amount paid, supporting documentation. She filled every field. She attached the recorder data. She attached the transaction receipt. She attached the sensor logs showing the other vessels stopped in the same corridor during the same shift. She sent one copy to the Merchant Marine Authority, one copy to the Human Merchant Guild, one copy to the Human Embassy on Yaveth Station. Then she sat back and looked out at the stars, moving past the forward window. Ray brought 2 cups of water from the dispenser and set one on the console beside her. He did not say anything for a while. He understood her well enough to know she did not need words right now. "They think we're like the Caluvians," she said finally. "Pay and move on, don't make noise." "Most people do," Ray said. "Most people didn't record every second of it with legal timestamps and file it with 3 separate authorities within 20 minutes, she said. Ray almost smiled. "You think anyone will actually do something?" Dara picked up the water cup. "I think the right person will read it," she said. "That's all it takes." The Iron Meridian moved through the corridor at full cruise speed. Behind them, the Drathan cruisers were already pulling the next ship over. They did not know about the recorder. They did not know about the 3 copies. They did not know that 75,000 credits had just become the most expensive mistake their empire would make in a generation. They just moved to the next ship and asked for their fee. The empire taxed a human freighter. That was their first mistake. Nobody expected the report to matter. That was the honest truth of it. Incident reports filed by cargo ships sat in queues for weeks. Most were complaints about delayed docking approvals or disputed fuel charges. The clerks who processed them had a running joke about the stack. "Call it the graveyard," they said, because nothing filed there ever came back to life. Hannah Solis read the Iron Meridian report the same evening it arrived. She was the director of the Merchant Marine Authority, which meant she had seen thousands of these filings. She had a system. She scanned the summary first. If the summary was sloppy, she flagged it for a clerk and moved on. If it was clean, she read the whole thing. The Iron Meridian summary was the cleanest she had ever seen. Every field filled, every figure precise. Transaction receipt attached. Sensor logs attached. Recorder data attached, time-stamped, encrypted, third-party mirrored. The name of the Drathan officer, the exact wording of the demand, the amount paid, the account it was paid to. She read it twice. Then she pulled up the MMA's incident database and ran a search. Drathan toll, neutral corridor, last 3 years. 34 results came back. She stared at that number for a long moment. 34 other human vessels had been stopped and charged in Drathan-adjacent neutral corridors over the past 14 months. Some had filed partial reports. Most had not filed anything at all. They had simply paid, logged it as an operating loss, and moved on. Nobody had connected the incidents because nobody had looked at them together. Until now. Solis forwarded the Iron Meridian file and the 34 supporting incidents to Ambassador Lyra Dunn on Yaveth Station with a single line of text. "Please review when you have a moment." Dunn replied 40 minutes later. Her message was 4 words. "This is exactly enough." Solis started making calls. Over the next 3 days, she built a legal claim that she and 2 staff members assembled from every available record. Every toll, every vessel name, every date, amount, and account number. They cross-referenced with cargo manifests, shipping insurance records, and port authority logs to verify each incident independently. The total amount extracted from human vessels across all 35 incidents came to just under 2 million credits. That was not a catastrophic number. The Drathan Empire moved trillions in commerce. 2 million was nothing to them. But precision was not about size. It was about proof. And what Solis now had was proof that was complete, verified, and referenced to a specific Drathan authority who had authorized the checkpoint operations. His name was High Executor Varath. His signature was on the original internal directive that had created the checkpoint program. One of Dunn's sources on Yaveth Station had located a copy of it through a Neutral Trade Council document request. a routine administrative mechanism that nobody had ever used to investigate an empire before. Meanwhile, the Iron Meridian had been asked to divert to Yaveth Station instead of completing its delivery run. Captain Wells agreed without argument. She and Ray docked on the commercial level and waited. They were told their recorder data and testimony would be needed. Ray spent the waiting time watching the Drathan shipping lanes on the public port display. They're still running the checkpoint. He told Dara. Of course they are, she said. Nothing's happened yet. You think something's going to happen. I think Soli's read my report. She was right about that. What she did not know yet was the full scale of what Solis had found, or that Varath, having been briefed by his staff on the human complaint, had just issued a new directive expanding the toll checkpoint program from 1 corridor to 3. The new memo arrived in Solis' office as an automated alert from Dunn's monitoring system at the Trade Council. A new assistant named Pell brought it to Solis' desk and waited to see her reaction. Solis read it, she set it down, she did not look angry. She looked like someone who had been hopping for exactly this. They expanded, Pell said carefully. They did, Solis said. Isn't that bad? Solis picked up the memo and slid it into the legal file she had been building, now over 400 pages. It means they don't think we're serious, she said. That's good. People who don't think you're serious never prepare properly. She sent a message to Dunn. They expanded to 3 corridors, added to the filing. Dunn's reply came back in under a minute. Already have. On Drathan Capital Station, Varath received a routine notification that a human trade authority had filed a complaint with the Yaveth Compact Council. His aide summarized it as procedural noise. Varath agreed. Humans filed complaints about everything. They paid in the end. They always paid in the end. He signed the expansion order and went to his next meeting. He did not know that 2 million credits in documented theft had just been handed to the best-prepared legal team in the sector. He did not know that the woman who built that file was not angry. He did not know that her lack of anger was the most dangerous thing about her. The file kept growing, the clock kept running, and in a docking bay on Yaveth Station, a small human freighter sat quiet and still, waiting for the moment its receipt became something the whole sector would remember. The Empire taxed a human freighter. That was their first mistake. There were no alarms, no announcements, no warships moving into position. The first sign that something had changed came from a port logistics supervisor at Dratha's main commercial hub, a Drathan named Oval, who noticed that 3 scheduled human cargo arrivals had not checked in that morning. He filed a delay notice. By afternoon, 2 more had gone silent. By the end of the week, 17 human-registered vessels that were supposed to be moving through Drathan-adjacent corridors had simply rerouted. Nobody told Oval why. The ships had not broken any rules. They had filed updated route plans through the standard Merchant Marine Authority advisory system, a voluntary routing notice, citing ongoing safety and legal review of certain transit corridors. It was not a blockade. A blockade would have been illegal. This was paperwork. The effect was the same. Drathan commercial ports received about 40% of their precision component supply through human cargo carriers. Machine tolerancing parts, medical compound precursors, data processing cores, the kind of high-value cargo that human freighters specialized in because humans had a reputation for on-time delivery and clean documentation. Other species could carry these goods too, but their routes were longer, their handling less reliable, and their prices higher. By the second week of the routing advisory, 3 Drathan industrial facilities had slowed production. Not stopped, slowed. The kind of slowdown that looked minor on a daily report but compounded fast when the restocking shipments also failed to arrive. Drathan supply administrators began sending urgent requests through the standard trade channels. They received automated responses directing them to the MMA Routing Advisory Status page, which said, "Review ongoing." In the Yaveth Station Council chamber, Ambassador Lyra Dunn walked to the filing desk and submitted a formal dispute under Article 14 of the Yaveth Compact, the mechanism for resolving illegal commercial interference between species. The filing was 912 pages. It listed every incident, every amount, every vessel name, every date. It named Subcommander Reth by title and action. It named High Executor Vareth by title, action, and the internal directive he had signed creating the checkpoint program. Counselor Yanni received the filing personally. He was a Vihari, a tall, quiet species that communicated partly through color shifts in the skin around their eyes. When Dunn handed him the physical copy, his eye skin went pale, which meant something between surprise and respect. "You have been building this for a while," he said. "Since the first report reached us," Dunn said. Yanni looked at the thickness of the filing. "You did not come here to negotiate." "We came here to document," Dunn said. "The compact will decide the rest." Yanni logged the filing. Under compact rules, the other party, the Drathan Empire, had 21 days to respond before the council could proceed to evaluation. Vareth was informed the same day. His reaction was loud and brief. He called it a propaganda exercise. He told his staff that humans had no real power in the compact framework and that the filing would die in review. He had seen species try this before, usually smaller ones, usually desperate ones. The council process moved slowly. Empires moved faster. He was right that empires moved faster. He was wrong about which empire he was measuring. The routing advisory had been live for 9 days. It would take another week before Drathan administrators started escalating their supply issues to the ministry level. It would take another week after that before the ministry realized the shortfalls were not coincidental. By then, the council's 21-day response clock would be more than half finished. Dara and Ray heard about the filing through the public council news feed while sitting in the galley of the docked Iron Meridian. The summary was short. A human trade authority had submitted a formal claim against the Drathan Empire under Article 14. Compact review pending. Ray read it twice. "We're in there," he said. "Page 3, Iron Meridian, Incident 1 of 35. "I know," Dara said. "We're just a receipt now." She looked at the screen for a moment. Out the port window, she could see other ships moving in and out of Yaveth Station, Vihari transports, Ashari bulk carriers, 2 Keluvian survey vessels, all of them still routing normally. The Drathans had not touched any of them. Humans had been the target because humans were organized enough to be worth taxing, and the Drathans had assumed, too practical to make noise about it. That assumption had a 912-page answer now. "The most expensive receipt they ever printed," Dara said. Ray said nothing for a while. Then, "You think they still don't understand what's happening?" "Vareth doesn't," she said. "His supply ministry is starting to figure it out. There's a difference." "How long before it reaches him?" Dara thought about it. She was not a political strategist. She was a cargo captain. But she had spent 20 years moving goods through complicated space, and she understood one basic truth about supply chains. Problems moved quietly until they were suddenly everywhere at once. "Another week," she said, "maybe less." She was off by 2 days. On the 13th day of the routing advisory, the Drathan Ministry of Industrial Supply sent its first official inquiry to the MMA, asking when normal routing would resume. Solis forwarded it to Dunn without comment. Dunn filed it as Exhibit 913. The clock kept running. The supply reports landed on Vareth's desk in a stack. His aide had organized them by sector, 3 from the industrial zone near Dratha Prime, 2 from the outer processing rings, 1 from the orbital fabrication cluster that produced navigation components for half the Drathan fleet. Each report said a variation of the same thing: materials delayed, production reduced, no confirmed resupply date. Vareth read the first two and pushed the rest aside. "Get me the trade ministry," he said. The ministry told him what his supply administrators had already escalated. Human cargo vessels had rerouted away from all Drathan-adjacent corridors, not seized, not lost, rerouted, voluntarily. The MMA had issued a routing advisory, and every registered human carrier had followed it. Vareth asked how long this had been going on. 17 days, the minister said. Vareth asked why he was only hearing about it now. The minister said the early numbers had looked manageable. The current numbers did not look manageable. The industrial slowdowns were starting to show in output figures that went to the Drathan High Council. Questions were being asked. Not publicly, not yet, but the people who saw the real production numbers were beginning to connect the shortfall to the routing advisory, and from there to the Yaveth Compact filing, and from there to the checkpoint program that Vareth had signed. He responded the way he always responded to pressure. He pushed back harder. He ordered 6 additional patrol cruisers to the Oreth corridor and 2 adjacent lanes, a visible show of force. He sent a formal message to the Yaveth Compact Council stating that the human filing was politically motivated and without merit. He also sent a private message to a senior Drathan Council ally, asking them to delay the compact review process on procedural grounds. The ally tried. Councillor Yanni blocked the procedural delay with a counterfiling that took 11 minutes to prepare, because Dunn had written it 3 days earlier in anticipation of exactly this move. Then something happened that Vareth had not planned for. Director Solis made a call to Admiral Gregor Foz. Foz commanded the 3rd Human Merchant Escort Fleet, 12 vessels, all of them large, all of them heavily equipped, all of them technically classified as trade protection assets rather than warships. The distinction mattered under the Yaveth Compact, which prohibited military positioning in neutral space, but said nothing about escort fleets conducting readiness exercises. Foz moved his ships to the edge of neutral space near the Oreth corridor, not inside Drathan territory, not blocking any lane, simply present, running standard diagnostics, broadcasting civilian band identifiers, doing nothing that any treaty prohibited. The Drathan patrol cruisers at the checkpoint could see them on long-range sensors. Foz sent no messages, made no demands. His fleet sat there like a wall of quiet intention, and every Drathan officer who looked at the sensor readout understood what it meant even though nothing aggressive had been said or done. Vareth was briefed on the fleet positioning within the hour. He sat with it for a long time. He had genuinely believed, that humans were the type of species that complained and then adjusted. They were traders. They were practical. They valued stability and profit over confrontation. He had run checkpoints in neutral corridors for over a year, and in that time, not one human captain had done more than file a report and move on. But this was not a single captain. This was a sequence that had been running since the first report landed on Solis's desk: routing advisory, legal filing, supply pressure, fleet positioning. Each step was careful, legal, and precisely timed. None of it crossed a treaty line. All of it pushed in the same direction. This was not a complaint. It had never been a complaint. It was a plan. 2 of Vareth's junior counselors, a trade specialist named Dorvek and a logistics advisor named Soon, submitted a private request to meet with Ambassador Dunn. They said they were acting informally, without official authorization. Dunn met with them in a small conference room on Yaveth Station's neutral commercial level. She brought no staff. She sat down, poured herself a cup of water, and waited. Dorvek asked what the minimum conditions were for human cargo routes to resume. Dunn looked at him for a moment without speaking. Dorvek had the look of someone who had already done the math and did not like the answer, but needed to hear it from the other side. "I understand you're not here officially," Dunn said. "We are not," Dorvik said. "Then I'll give you an unofficial answer," she said. "There is no minimum. There is only the filing. The compact will evaluate it on its merits, and whatever the compact decides will be the terms." Soon leaned forward. "But if the Empire were to make a direct offer?" "The time for direct offers was before the filing," Dunn said. She was not unkind about it, just clear. "What I can tell you is that the compact process will conclude in 8 days. Whatever happens in those 8 days will either help or hurt your position with the Council. That is the only flexibility that remains." She let them sit with that. Then she added, almost gently, "Tell Vareth the fleet is not going anywhere." They left without another word. Dunn finished her water and messaged Solis. They blinked. 8 days. The council chamber on Yaveth Station held 40 seats, and it was full. That almost never happened. Most compact proceedings drew a handful of trade observers and a clerk. This session had representatives from 11 species, 2 neutral journalism outlets, and every Drathan official who could justify being on the station. They filled the observer benches along the walls and talked quietly among themselves while the session prepared to open. Councillor Yanni called the room to order. He stated the nature of the session: formal evaluation of the human claim filed under Article 14 of the Yaveth Compact. Both parties were present. The documentation had been reviewed by the full council panel. The session would now proceed to the human delegation's presentation of remedy terms. Dunn stood up. She did not use notes. She had memorized everything. "The human delegation submits the following terms," she said. "First, full repayment of all documented tolls collected from human vessels, 35 incidents, totaling 1,942,000 credits, plus 12% interest as permitted under Article 9 of the Compact's commercial dispute provisions." The Drathan delegation shifted in their seats. Their lead representative, a senior official named Gareth, started to speak. Yanni held up a hand. Gareth stopped. "Second," Dunn continued, "formal removal of Subcommander Reth from any authority over neutral space checkpoints, effective immediately upon agreement. Third, the Drathan Empire will remove High Executor Vareth from his current position, or, if the Empire prefers, accept a formal public censure entered into the permanent compact record. The human delegation offers the choice." That one landed differently. Gareth went very still. "Fourth, a binding corridor use agreement, co-signed by no fewer than 3 neutral council witnesses, confirming that the Orath corridor and all adjacent neutral lanes are toll-free in perpetuity for all registered compact species. Fifth, for a period of 10 years, any Drathan checkpoint operating in neutral space must be registered with the Compact Council 60 days in advance, with purpose, location, and authority documentation on file. Dunn sat down. Gareth was on his feet before she finished. "These are not terms," he said. "This is an act of war dressed in legal language." "It is an invoice," Dunn said from her seat. "The Drathan Empire does not accept invoices from cargo operators." "You already did," Dunn said. 35 times we have the receipts." Several of the observer delegates made sounds that were not quite laughter, but were close. Yanni called for order and then called for a procedural vote, not on the terms themselves, but on whether the terms were consistent with what compact law allowed under Article 14. This was standard process. The terms had to be within the legal framework before the full evaluation could proceed. 7 council members voted that the terms were within framework. 2 voted against. The 2 who voted against were both species that had trade dependencies with the Drathan Empire. Everyone in the room understood the calculation. Gareth sent an urgent message to Drathan Capital Station. The response came back within the hour. Stand down the additional patrol cruisers. Do not escalate further. The economic impact of the routing advisory had reached a level that the High Council could no longer absorb quietly. Vareth had lost the room before the vote was even called. He made one last attempt through Gareth. A private offer passed through a back channel to Dunn's office. The Drathan Empire would refund the specific toll paid by the Iron Meridian, the vessel that had filed the original report, as a gesture of goodwill. In exchange, the human delegation would withdraw the broader filing. Dunn read the message. She wrote back 4 words. That offer was acceptable 14 months ago. She forwarded Vareth's offer and her response to Counselor Yanni and asked that both be entered into the official session record. Yanni entered them. In the docking bay, Dara and Ray were watching the council feed on a portable screen propped against a cargo crate. The chamber audio was live but quiet, mostly procedural language, document references, formal responses. Ray had been following it for 2 hours. They're going to sign, he said. They don't have a choice anymore, Dara said. They had a choice 3 months ago. They didn't think they needed one. Ray watched Gareth's face on screen as the procedural vote result was read out. The Drathan official had the expression of someone doing difficult arithmetic and not liking the answer. It was a specific kind of expression, not anger, not grief, just the hard quiet of understanding that the situation was completely outside his control and had been for some time. What happens to Vareth? Ray asked. The Empire gets to choose, Dara said. Removed quietly or censured publicly. Either way it goes into the compact record. So they lose him no matter what. They lost him the day they sent that memo expanding the program. Ray was quiet for a while. On screen, Yanni was speaking again, procedural steps, timelines, next session scheduling. We're going home soon, Ray said. Soon, Dara agreed. She looked at the screen. She looked at the docking bay around her, the same bay she had been sitting in for 3 months while the machinery she had started with one report ground slowly, and completely through everything the Drathan Empire had tried to put in its way. She thought about the route home, same corridor, same lane. No toll. The signing took less than an hour. The Drathan Trade Ministry sent its authorized representative to Yaveth Station, not Gareth, who had been reassigned, and not Vareth, whose name no longer appeared on any official communications. The new representative was a younger official named Koss, who moved through the chamber quietly and signed each document page without argument. His signature went on all 5 terms. The repayment, the removal of Reth, the censure of Vareth. The Empire had chosen censure over quiet removal, which meant the record would name him and detail what he had done, permanently, in the compact archive that every species could access. The Corridor Agreement, the 10-year oversight arrangement. Koss signed and left. He did not make a speech. Counselor Yanni countersigned as the compact witness, along with representatives from the Vihari and the Ashari, 2 of the neutral species who had watched the proceedings from the beginning, 3 witnesses, as required. The agreement was filed, it was live, it was binding. 2 days later, the repayment transfers cleared. Every human vessel that had been stopped and charged in the previous 3 years received their credited amount, the original toll plus the 12% interest that compact law allowed. The Iron Meridian's share came to just under 90,000 credits. Not a fortune, not the point. Solis received confirmation of all 35 transfers before she lifted the routing advisory. She waited until every single one cleared. Then she sent the update through the MMA system, corridors restored to normal routing status. All Drathan-adjacent lanes open. Human freighters began moving again within 48 hours. On Yaveth Station, Dara filed her departure clearance and started the pre-flight process. Same cargo she had been hauling when this started, industrial fabricators and pharmaceutical precursors, destination Kessel Ring colonies. The goods had been sitting in a bonded warehouse for 3 months. The buyers had been patient, partly because the MMA had sent a formal notification explaining the delay, and partly because everyone in the sector had been watching the compact proceedings on the public feed. Ray ran through the system's checklist while Dara handled communications. They moved through the process in the easy silence of people who had worked together long enough to not need words for routine tasks. "Same route?" Ray asked when they were in the final approach window. "Same route," Dara said. The Iron Meridian undocked from Yaveth Station and moved into the transit lane. The journey to the Oreth corridor took about 6 hours at standard cruise. Dara spent most of it in the back office, catching up on paperwork that had accumulated while they were docked. Ray monitored the lane traffic from the bridge. When they reached the Oreth corridor entrance, there was a checkpoint station. It was a Drathan installation. Same gray hull markings. Same general configuration as the cruisers that had stopped them 3 months ago. But this one was smaller, a registered monitoring post, filed with the Compact Council 60 days in advance as now required, staffed by Drathan customs officers whose role was to log vessel passage, nothing more. No cruisers blocking the lane, no officers demanding fees. Ray opened the standard transit channel. The Drathan officer on the other end was young, efficient, and extremely careful to say nothing beyond what the job required. He checked the Iron Meridian's registration, logged the vessel, confirmed the cargo class, and said, "Passage confirmed. No fees." Ray looked at Dara. Dara had told herself she would not make it a moment. They were cargo haulers. They had a delivery to make. The corridor was clean and the lane was open, and that was all it needed to be. She keyed the comm anyway. "Thank you," she said. "Safe shift." She closed the channel. The Iron Meridian moved into the corridor at full cruise speed. The checkpoint station fell behind them and disappeared from the aft sensors. Ahead, the lane was clear, deep space, and open stars all the way to the Kessel Ring. Ray did not say anything for a while. Then, "That was a very small thank you for a very large amount of trouble." "That's the right size for it," Dara said. He thought about that. "Yeah," he said, "I think you're right." 3 weeks later, an internal memo began circulating through the Drathan Imperial Border Authority's Checkpoint Command Network. It came from the administrative office that had handled the compact proceedings, not from Varath, who no longer worked there, but from the new oversight division that Koss had been tasked with building. The memo was short. The subject line was, "Operational Guidance, Human Registered Vessels." The body read, "All checkpoint personnel are reminded that human registered vessels operating in or near neutral corridors are to be processed under standard compact protocol only. No fees, surcharges, facilitation requests, or delays are to be applied. For context regarding the origin of this guidance, see the attached reference file." The attached reference file was the full 912-page compact filing, plus the amendments, plus the signed agreement, plus the censure record. 640 pages of what happened when one human captain paid a toll, saved the receipt, and filed a report that the right person actually read. At the bottom of the memo, someone in the Oversight Division had added a single handwritten note, not official, not signed, just ink on the printed copy. "Do not stop human vessels. They will document everything."